Hey guys, welcome to the latest edition of Face to Face with. And today I've got the pleasure of being joined by a bona fide veteran in British wrestling, irresistible Iestyn Rees, amongst other names. Iestyn, thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me, Ross. No problem at all.
Were you a fan of wrestling growing up?
Yeah, I started sort of watching wrestling. I didn't have Sky or anything growing up, but my cousin got Sky, and he used to video the WWF Superstars shows back to back on long play VHS. Which, if there's anyone younger than sort of 25 watching this, they'd be like, "What the hell is that?" But basically, he used to put about 3 or 4 episodes of that on a tape for me, and I'd see him about once a month, and then he'd give it to me, so I'd get the month's worth of wrestling in one go. And I'd used to watch it, but it wasn't till he got me WrestleMania 7 that really sort of hooked me in, and I've been a fan ever since, basically.
Yeah, I read somewhere that your favourite match, the match that hooked you into it was Warrior against Savage.
Yeah, that match, I love the Ultimate Warrior, and then how old was I? About 7 years old when I watched WrestleMania 7. Yeah, watching my favourite wrestler potentially get retired was a stressful experience that any 7-year-old goes through. But yeah, that match hooked me in, and I've been a fan ever since. Apologies if you can hear my little boy's having a temper tantrum in the next room, so I do apologise if that comes across on the audio.
So how did you actually get started yourself in wrestling?
Yeah, so I was at uni in Manchester, and I was coming towards the end of my degree, and I've been a big basketball player up until that point. But there was going to be no sort of teams when I was coming home from finishing uni. There was no decent teams around by me. And then I'd looked on the internet, and I was like, I'd seen a couple of wrestling schools on the wrestling channel. I don't know if you remember that old cable channel. And I just thought, see if there's any wrestling schools around by me. And there was 3 to choose from. I looked at their websites, and the 4FW school in Swindon looked the most, professional. So I turned up there one Sunday in June or July, a long time ago, 2005, and that's when it started. And I've been doing it ever since.
So who actually trained you? I know you say 4FW, but
sure. So yeah, Dave Sharp was the trainer that that trained me and brought me through, and then I started working the 4FW shows, and then sort of expanded out from there.
And then more recently, you were part of the Alpha Males. How did that come about?
So I'd known Charlie for a couple of years, and he'd sort of broken into the business, and we'd started working some shows together. And I can't remember, I think we ended up being put in a 6-man tag on one show, just randomly on a show run by us in the Southwest. And we seemed to have pretty good chemistry, so we thought, let's, we went to the promoter and said, look, we'd like to work as a tag team. And they put us together, and we did a long program. I don't know if you know the Magnums with Dick Riley and Chris Walker. So we worked a long program with them, and that's sort of how we sort of developed as a tag team, basically. And then we started working at IPW and a few other companies as well, FPW.
Yeah, because I've read somewhere about a triple threat tag match.
Yeah,
it was you and Charlie against London Riots and
Osprey and Paul Robinson.
There we go.
Yeah, it was that's one of my favourite matches. Yeah, that match was really good. The show that we were on, they drew a massive crowd at a big leisure centre and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a great match, definitely.
And those guys have done all right for themselves.
Yeah, they're not done too bad. Yeah, exactly.
So, have you got any? Because you've been wrestling for a while now, haven't you? Have you got any funny road stories?
I've got lots of ones of where we've been driving. I had one where my car broke down, and then me and a few other wrestlers were stuck on the side of the road in Devon for 4 hours. So we had to make our own entertainment. So there was ended up with people with no clothes on, ended up with all kinds of shenanigans going on just to entertain ourselves. I've had ones where we've had to stop on motorway hard shoulders so boys could relieve themselves and use the nature's facility, shall we say. Couple of times driving up to Scotland where the weather's gone from fairly average to a snowstorm in sort of the space of a minute, and the car's sort of skidding down the motorway. So yeah, lots of interesting tales and stories and stuff like that.
Yeah,
one of the good ones. I'll tell you this one. So there was 5 of us in the car: me, Dave Mastiff, Gilligan Gordon, Joel Redmond, and Scotty Too Hotty. And we were playing the wrestler name game where you have to start the next wrestler with the first letter. So if I said Steve Austin, you'd have to then find a wrestler with the name beginning with A, because that was Austin's surname. So we were playing that game. And Scotty Too Hotty rang Albert, Matt Bloom, who was in Japan at the time, to qualify one of the wrestlers that he'd named randomly from Japan. So yeah, that was quite a cool story.
So I've read quite a funny story actually from I think it was RJ Singh that involved you.
Yeah.
It was you and Charlie Sterling.
Yeah.
I think it was Garrett at the time.
Yeah.
And he said something like, "This is a rib."
Yeah, I know the story. So we were looking at the Rumble order, and he was just Charlie's. He's a fantastic wrestler, more talented than 99.9% of people, but he's just got this gene in him that makes him the most annoying human being ever as well. So we're looking through the Rumble order, and Charlie's like, "This is a rib, that's a rib, what's going on here?" Oh, I'm like, "Charlie, you're the bloody rib. Now leave us alone."
Brilliant. Yeah, I saw, like I said, I think it was RJ Singh that said that. And
yeah, me and Ross were discussing something about this Rumble order, and Charlie comes over, so it was the 3 of us there, yeah.
Brilliant. So, have you had any injuries in your time?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of quite severe injuries. I'd had a previous sort of knee injury before I got into wrestling from when I was a kid playing rugby and stuff like that, and then I had a reoccurrence of that early on in my career that led me to having one knee. Well, I had one knee operation at the time, then another one on the knee. So I kept dislocating my left kneecap. So I had that area all sort of tightened up in my knee. And then my two major injuries that I've had. So I was wrestling Dave Mastiff, and coincidentally and a bit eerily, it was the same night that Mizawa died in the ring. So that's why I know the date, because it all happened on that day. So I'm wrestling Dave Mastiff on a show. Everyone's seen Dave Mastiff. He's a big bloke. So I pick him up on my shoulders to do a fireman's carry maneuver, basically do the John Cena's FU. As I bend down, my patella tendon, so the tendon that attaches your quads, the upper front muscles at the front of your leg, to the lower part of your leg, completely snapped in two. So my kneecap shot from my knee joint halfway up my thigh, and I just crumpled in a heap. And there was a great big, the skin was still intact, but you could feel a great big hole at the front of my knee where my kneecap was supposed to be. So everyone knows Triple H obviously tore his quad, so he tore one muscle. I basically tore all 4 in one go. So they had to go in. I've got a great big scar on my leg. They had to go in, pull my kneecap back down, stitch all the front of my knee internally back together, drill into my kneecap, drill into my shin bone with special screws that had thick thread that they then stitched into my tendon. Then I have a metal figure of 8 put in to sort of act as my tendon initially. Then I snapped that ahead of rehab schedule, so they had to then go back in and take that back out as well. So yeah, and then I've torn some of the muscle in my pec, multiple whiplashes that I'm sure all wrestlers get. Lots and lots of injuries, but those are the main. The right knee's the main one.
Yeah. So, how was it wrestling for PWE?
Great experience. I sort of met Adrian working at Preston, and we sort of got chatting, and it was Andy Wilde that actually did the introduction for us and sort of pushed for me to come to wrestle in Scotland. So I hadn't wrestled for Preston at this time, but Andy had already put the introduction with Adrian in. So Adrian was looking to bring me in, but he wanted to make it a big deal. So he got me to film some vignettes and stuff like that. 2 seconds, Ross. I'll see you later, Mads. Yeah, of course. So I filmed some vignettes for him and stuff like that. Then I met Adrian when I started working at Preston, and then he brought me in, gave me a major role in the company. I got to wrestle, Drew McIntyre in his first ever match in his hometown, and he really did, made an effort to make me being in the company something special. So it was an absolute honour. So it was brilliant.
So obviously he's now sadly passed on, but how important has he been for your career?
He was massively important. We became really good friends. We'd chat every day via text and stuff like that. And he was one of the guys that I always went to and asked advice. He'd been really successful in the business. He'd been in the business longer than me. He was one of the main guys that made Scotland, the place to be. So, I always took his opinion, on board as one of the highest. I'd always go and ask him for advice, definitely.
What are your memories, if any, of working with Chris Travis?
So I worked a couple of matches with Chris. We worked randomly at a TLC match out of nowhere. Was the first time that I worked him. I think the promoter was like, "Oh, we got Project." This is when Project Ego were the tag team in Britain. Local promoter by me booked me and Charlie versus him. He's like, "Oh, we're doing a TLC." We all got there and were like, TLC with no build. We had great fun working the match, and then I got to know him a bit when we were working at Preston, sort of before he got ill. I'd worked on some other shows with him, and then obviously he got ill. And then when he was coming back, I got friendly with him, just chatting, sort of, because we were due to do some stuff at Preston when he came back, and then we spent a weekend where we had a Preston show on the Friday. We drove from there up to Scotland on the Saturday to work for Adrian and PWE, and then I drove him down to the Midlands because he was going on to another show, and I was going down to Kent to wrestle for IPW. So we spent the whole weekend together, and we got really quite close after that. So yeah, he was a great guy. Got him really well. Just gutted we never got to have the one-on-one match. So I think that we'd have been able to tell a really good story, definitely.
Yeah, because if you don't mind me sharing a personal story, before I went to my very first show, I actually I messaged him quite a few times.
Yeah,
and he was on the first show that I went to, and he caught sight of me and just gave me a little wink.
Yeah,
and that was just like I was a massive fan of him straight away.
Yeah, he was a good guy. He had a lot of time for the fans and stuff like that. And he, what happened was incredibly heartbreaking. I feel that if he was still around today, he'd be a major player.
Oh.
NXT UK potentially further afield than that. But it was just a hell of a shame, really.
Yeah, massively. So, have we talked about highlights? No, we haven't. What have been some of your career highlights?
Yeah, so I mean, I sound real cheesy when I say I've got too many to mention, but some of the big ones, obviously, getting to be on the first Hydro show for ICW, so that was in front of nearly sort of 7,000 people and was the biggest show since Big Daddy versus Haystacks at Wembley Arena and stuff like that. Just working all of the big venues up in Scotland for ICW, getting to wrestle for Progress, and then just simple little things like there was a tag match that I did for 4FW, which was me, JD Knight, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Gilligan Gordon, Matt Lomax, and Soul Adam. So all of those guys have been in sort of wrestling with me from sort of the beginning. So to get to have that match and have Hacksaw Jim Duggan there, we just had a great time doing that. And then, yes, other ones is, getting to travel up and down the country, all over Europe, and get to just live the dream for sort of 15 years, really. But yeah, so many. I could go on for ages chatting about them.
So who are some of your best friends in the business?
So when I broke in, so I trained. Matt Lomax had been training a little bit longer than I had. Gilligan Gordon came in shortly after, obviously, and then Charlie, Sterling. Charles Samuels is one of my close friends. He's been another guy that was almost sort of like a mentor to me. He's always a guy I ask for his opinion whenever thinking about anything in wrestling and stuff like that. And then just guys up in Scotland, Jackie Polo, who works for ICW. Again, I've been lucky. Well, I like to think I'm well liked in most of the locker rooms that I go in. No one seems to have a cold shoulder for me, so I tend to just try and be as friendly as I can with as many people as I can. But yeah, those are the guys that I sort of chat to the most sort of regularly and stuff like that.
So I just want to talk about a couple of factions you've been in.
Yeah, sure.
The firm and the agenda. I mean, what was it like learning from the likes of Keith Myatt?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two firms on the internet. There's two companies that use the same one. So I wasn't actually in the one with Keith, but I've wrestled with Keith quite a few times, and just to pick his brains. And he's a guy that has been there and done it, and worked with all the world of sport greats and stuff like that. And it's just the little tidbits that you can pick up from guys like that, the little nuances that you don't necessarily see or you don't necessarily know. So I think I think on the couple of websites it's got me being in one firm, but it was actually another firm that basically became the agenda. So
because I think the one that I looked at was you, Gilligan Gordon, Keith Myatt, and I can't think of the other two, but I didn't realise there was two.
Yeah, no worries. And then the agenda, I mean, if you look at the guy, I mean, it's a bit sad, really. Everyone else in the agenda, apart from me, went on to work for WWE. But no, it was great. It was one of the first real times that I've been sort of pushed into the spotlight. Alongside sort of the stuff I'd done in IPW, where I was in the main event working the best talent in Britain. And we were doing stuff, cutting promos and doing stuff that was big shows well ahead of their time and stuff like that. So, if you look at where the majority of those guys are gone, all of us either work for WWE or World of Sport. So we've been seen by millions of people. So it kind of, it was kind of true to life. It ended up being in the end and stuff like that. But, it was a great learning experience.
You mentioned about World of Sport. How big was it for you to be on such a kind of well-renowned program?
Yeah, no, it was a huge opportunity at the time, and I'm really grateful that I got the chance to do it. It came about again, they did the pilot, and then some of the guys from the pilot got signed to WWE, so there were spots opened up on the TV show. I was lucky enough to be contacted by ITV, and they chose to put me and Kip together as a tag team, which was I had a great time working with Kip. The whole experience, if you chat to any of the guys and girls that did it, those 4 or 5 days that we filmed the TV on, and then the subsequent tour were some of the best times that we had in wrestling. It's just a real shame that the guys that were running it and they kind of they basically messed it up. They basically held their cards too close to their chest. There was offers on the table from other channels, Dave being one of them, that wanted to really run with the World of Sport, but they were so intent on trying to get it back onto ITV1. When we got good viewing figures, it got slated on a lot of wrestling social media and wrestling websites and stuff like that. But no, we weren't seen by less than 1 million people if you took in total the initial airing and the replays and the catch-up. So 1 million people a week were watching British wrestling, on TV. So there was definitely an audience for it. The live shows definitely proved it as well. We sold out 5 of the 6 venues, with over 1,000 people in 4 of them. So that, we did great crowds. We put on a great product. It could have been something that really was its own unique little entity. Unfortunately, the guys behind it, they wanted it to be a certain way, and then ITV kind of put it on the back burner, and then it just got filed away somewhere and never came to fruition. When at the time when it was, it was a sort of hot commodity in TV terms and in live product terms. We could have, if we'd have announced another tour whilst we were on tour, we'd have sold as many tickets again. It was just a missed opportunity, if you ask me. And it's a shame it didn't come to fruition, but it allowed a lot of guys some really good exposure. And a lot of the guys from there have gone on, and girls have gone on to do great things. Japan, WWE, NXT UK. So it was a real launching platform for a lot of guys and girls as well.
Okay, yeah, we'll move on to the word association game. So
Sure.
I'll give you 5 names, and then you say the first word that comes to your head.
Sure.
We'll start off with your tag team partner, Charlie Sterling.
The best talent, best natural talent.
PWE.
Fantastic experience, great crowds.
Charles Samuels.
One of the best, deserves to be where he is today.
Martin Stone.
Again, hell of a talent, deserves all the things that have come through the hard work he's put in.
And another guy that you faced, Rampage Brown.
The hardest hitting bloke in British wrestling. Again, he is probably the best British wrestler of the last 20 years.
There was something else I wanted to ask, actually.
Yeah, of course.
Are there any promotions that you'd like to work at when shows are allowed to come back?
I don't know if I might be collecting my pension by the time that shows come back, Ross. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm at a stage in my career. I just want to work as many places as I can. There's lots of new promotions coming in that I think I could be an asset to. I want to travel as far as I can. I've been lucky enough to travel all over Europe, wrestling as well. I'd like to travel even further afield. There's no one promotion that I say, I desperately want to work there, but I'd happily wrestle anywhere against anyone, anytime, basically.
Okay, brilliant. Also, what was it like holding the top title at IPW?
Oh, that was a great experience. I mean, in hindsight, I was probably a little bit too inexperienced for the position that I was pushed into, but it meant that the learning curve was incredibly fast, and I feel that I really developed as a wrestler because I was forced to work guys that were much higher standard than me, and they really helped me develop as a wrestler. So yeah, no, I look back on that time period as a real positive. It really helped me develop as a wrestler, definitely.
Brilliant. So that's going to do it for the interview.
Thanks.
Iestyn, thanks for joining me on the show.
No problem at all, Ross. Thanks for having me. Take
Brilliant.
care.
Take care.